Men/women, what made you lose interest in being intimate with your partner? The one time my attraction completely died was with a girlfriend who was actively trying to make me jealous. I had met a new female friend, and to me that wasn't an issue. I loved my girlfriend and spent all my free time with her. The new friend was part of the baseball team I was on, so we basically only met at practice and games. But my girlfriend saw her as a threat. When I couldn't see why, she decided to try to make me jealous. She started talking about a guy in her swim class, telling me how he'd look at her and was probably interested in her. I just laughed it off. Why would I worry? She was lying there in bed with me. He was no threat, and she loved me. Apparently that bothered her even more because I didn't react the way she wanted. So she decided to take it further. Right after we had done it, as I was getting ready to cuddle, she said, "That was really great. At least this time I didn't think about the guy from swim class the entire time." My body froze. I could feel every single emotion fade. I've never really felt love die like that before, and I was basically disgusted, not by what she implied, but by the lengths she went to just to make me jealous. I obviously knew her plan, and we broke up right then and there. I was sad because she was the first girl I ever really loved, but the trust was gone from all sides. She's also the only ex I can't speak to because she's been angry at me ever since. Story 2. Turned out she was an absolute lazy slob. Her stuff was everywhere. She would leave wrappers and garbage on the counter right next to the trash can. Walking through her side of the room was like navigating a minefield of clothes, paperwork, and bags, all covered in dust. She would literally leave a trail wherever she went. Open doors, open cabinets, garbage, dirty dishes, empty paper towel and toilet paper rolls, open toothpaste, forgetting to turn off the stove, staying up until 4 a.m., and then taking showers that sounded like a construction zone. Piles of dirty clothes everywhere. The dryer used as storage for clean clothes, never putting gas in the car, constant notices of late payments on bills, and more. It was exhausting. Story 3. When we were in high school and my first 2 years of university, I was with my ex. Coming from a traditional Christian home, she was the one who initiated our intimate life. But she was also terrified of getting pregnant. We used protection every time, but she was convinced that absolutely everything physical could get her pregnant. And how did she handle that fear? A regular, once-a-month pregnancy test? No. She would scream and cry instead. She never did a single test to calm herself down. She claimed she couldn't, that she didn't want to, but if she really wanted, she could. Like at my place, in the college bathroom. Every time we engaged in anything intimate, I had to deal with months of her fear, anxiety, screaming, and crying. She also had health problems, so her period was often late, sometimes by months. That didn't help. After 2 years of dealing with it, I distanced myself. It was too hard on my mental health. Intimacy became associated with fear and crying. I felt a lot of guilt about it, but I couldn't handle it anymore. Story 4. I found out she was fired from her job as a teacher for hitting a student so hard that he lost consciousness and hit his head on the pavement. I couldn't see myself starting a family with her if she thought hitting a child that hard was acceptable. Edit. I wanted to answer a few questions I've been getting. How soon did I break up with my ex? I broke up with her after she told me her side of the story. We were not living together at the time, so I found out the Saturday after it happened. Her story was vague, avoiding specifics about how she ended up alone with the student or what prompted her to strike him. Did my ex face criminal charges or jail time? She admitted she was detained the day it happened. After we broke up, I read that the district attorney chose not to pursue formal charges due to a lack of witnesses, and the student refused to answer questions. The school still fired her because she admitted to hitting the student but refused to answer questions. Was my ex sued? How bad were the student's injuries? Yes, the student's parents sued the school district and my ex. The case was dismissed because they were seeking over $10 million for what the local paper described as a scraped forehead. What do I think happened? I think my ex saw the student doing something she took offense to and gave in to her impulse to violence. When we dated, she would slap me if she thought I was being impolite, like not opening a door for her or failing to invite her to spend the night after a date. She was so self-centered that she believed she was in the right and even felt compelled to brag about it to the school before realizing they would disagree, at which point she clammed up and refused to answer questions. Since the student wouldn't say what happened before he was hit, I can only assume he was doing something that made him feel ashamed, whether or not that shame was justified. Story 5. Having to walk on eggshells? It was impossible. If we banged, it was, "Oh, now you want to do it?" If we didn't, it was, "Why don't you want to do it?" She was incredibly beautiful, but absolute torture to be around sometimes. With her mental health issues, she could lose it at any moment, ruin the day, and turn nasty at the flip of a switch. Being judged constantly without even realizing it, until she popped off and started making accusations completely sapped all desire. I had to micromanage my entire life. Was I in the bathroom too long? Did I put my phone down wrong? Did I use the wrong words in a sentence? Was I on my phone too long, even though she was on hers too? Being at my house instead of hers felt like a mental vacation. I could do normal human things without fear of prosecution. Except then, I'd get nasty texts or social media messages saying I was ignoring her. Well, yeah, kinda. I was just having me time. Story 6. I found out my dad has terminal cancer and I cried. She told me she couldn't see me the same way anymore and started growing distant. We had been dating for 2 years at that point, and she'd always told me it was okay to be vulnerable with her. As far as I knew, everything was normal until that moment. We broke up about a week later. I tried to hold it in until I was alone, but I couldn't. I quietly wept while driving home, not yelling or lashing out, just quietly weeping. When we got home, she rubbed my back for a bit. I went to work on my computer to keep my mind busy. Then she came into my office, apologized, and said she couldn't see me the same way anymore. Then she went to her parents. Story 7. By my honor, I once courted Lady Gwendolen of the Putrid Moor. Her looks were fair enough, but her scent, by the heavens! 'Twas as though 1,000 unwashed socks had been boiled in rotten cabbage. One eve she emerged wearing rabbit ears, wielding a leek, and bellowed, "By the moon of Thunder Tree, I summon thee!" I summoned instead the strength to flee, trousers flapping in the wind like a white flag of surrender. 'Twas not love that died that night, but my sense of smell. God help us all. Story 8. She got super drunk and wanted to do it. I told her she was too drunk and that I wasn't comfortable, and I refused. She started begging, but I refused again. When the begging didn't work, she became hysterical, screaming and crying about how she was fat and ugly and how I was repulsed by her, none of which was true. Being young, dumb, and rather wasted, I caved. That was a mistake, but I genuinely didn't know what to do. I was emotionally exhausted at that point from both what was happening and the relationship in general. The next morning, she asked if we had done it. I explained what had happened. She accused me of essay. I was done after that. I never even hugged her again. Although no real legal damage came from the accusation, it affected me for a long time. Story 9. My ex-wife made me lose interest for a couple of reasons. I had to initiate 99% of the time, and she put in almost no effort. It got so bad I felt like I was taking it, rather than enjoying it. No matter the time or place, we always ended up in the same position until it was over, sometimes literally pausing to walk across the house before continuing. She also had no desire to improve. Anytime I tried to get her to do something differently, she would cry or say I was comparing her to other women. This led to a marriage with no intimacy for 3 years, until we divorced. Story 10. She always made a big deal about me not asking for intimacy. Every single day. But when I did, she made an even bigger deal about how inconvenient it was, then turned around and claimed I never asked in the first place. She also said I kept pestering her for money, even though I let her live with me rent-free and paid for all groceries, food, and utilities so she could save for a car. I was glad when she finally left and ghosted me. Story 11. Years of neglect, combined with emotional and verbal abuse fueled by BPD and narcissism, diagnosed by a psychologist, took their toll. I thought I was in love with her, but looking back, it was finely crafted manipulation, trained into her by surviving a childhood under her parents. I can now recall seeing the cracks start to form, but by then I felt stuck, until her child, who considered me a father, would be old enough to escape her mother's tyranny. We were both in survival mode for a very long time. Nothing ruins the mood like death by 1,000 paper cuts spanning years. Story 12. I'm a man who left multiple relationships lasting over 3 years before marrying my now wife, with whom I've been for over 7 years. In prior relationships, intimacy became boring because I lost interest in who my partner was. Even though they remained extremely attractive, I knew there was a little left to get excited about. Physical intimacy brings, and keeps, partners close and represents a special bond, but the partner needs to be worth bonding with. In contrast, my wife has remained an amazing partner and mother. She keeps up outside hobbies, continuously improves herself, respects my hobbies, contributes meaningfully, communicates her preferences, honors mine, and treats differences as problems to solve together. Her body has changed after multiple children, of course, but I look forward to every touch, every view, every day and night with her. Story 13. I'm just going to say it, and it's going to sound shallow. She's put on over 100 pounds in the last 4 years and has completely given up on taking care of herself. 18 years together, a couple of great kids. But in the last few years, she'd rather sit on the couch drinking wine and eating snacks than do anything physical to manage her weight. That, coupled with other issues, gets old. Being told no again and again wears you down. I'm getting tired of it. Story 14. After we got married, she kind of gave up on herself. Things began to change slowly. No more initiative to do anything together or with others. No more self-care, sports, beauty routines, activity, shopping, or maintaining friendships. She lost interest in keeping our home spotless and decorated, a task that had once been very important to her, and stopped working toward her own goals. She even mostly neglected her flowers and plants. She started gaining weight from overeating and constant snacking. She transformed from a fit and active American football player, second league, to someone who, outside of work, spent most of her time on the couch or in bed, scrolling Instagram, Pinterest, or Reels and watching shallow entertainment. Her random bursts of activity didn't help either. She also constantly shut down my advances, so eventually I stopped trying. Story 15. Not that I lost interest entirely, but her whole apartment smelled like cat piss, clothes, furniture, everything. It wasn't horrible, but it was definitely pungent and noticeable. So, you have any pets? No, management actually doesn't allow them. Ah, crap. I had already made an hour-long trek, and at that point, paying for an Uber and train ride wasn't going to go to waste. So I sucked it up, held my breath, and got my money's worth. But after that, I used the first excuse I could to leave as soon as she invited me to stay longer. I played an old voicemail from my boss asking me to come in for the day just loud enough for her to hear. I was so glad I'd kept it because I knew I'd need it one day. I did. The whole act. Pretended he had called during my visit, said he left a voicemail and checked it out. It worked out great for me. My lungs? As soon as I got home, I dug up an inhaler my doctor had given me a few months prior when I had pneumonia. Story 16. It was a combination of many different things. Her undiagnosed BPD, finding out that she was in an unresolved relationship with a guy deployed overseas in the military, and that I was the other man for 3 years, and her holding my struggles, shortcomings, and my self-harm attempt against me while I was trying to overcome addiction, all of it, only for her to say I wasn't doing enough. By the end, I was repulsed by her. When I made the decision to leave, she refused to leave my house for hours, and when she finally did, she stalked me for a month at my job, my house, and the gym, only to find a new victim a week later and post on Twitter about leveling up her life with her man, saying she would never deal with bum. Men, again. Story 17. Overwhelming amounts of criticism. Walking on eggshells every day, waiting to find out what I had done wrong and how severe the verbal abuse would be as a result. The weaponization of the children. She even admitted she was trying to isolate me and them from everyone but her, so she could have complete control and face no criticism of her own. There was never one singular moment of clarity. Instead, what had once been an experience unmatched by any previous partners became a chore that had to be done, because it was the only thing I could still do correctly, and it gave me a brief respite from the near-constant misery. Story 18. Dramatic weight gain. Her job stress, combined with a poor diet and lack of physical activity, turned me off. She started going to a dance studio, but only once a week. At least it's something, but she needs to do more. We haven't been intimate since December, and before that September, and before that July. We've only been intimate 3 times since July. That's crazy to think about now that I put it out there. I'm still with her because I love her, but I don't know how much longer I can put up with this. It's starting to feel like we're becoming roommates. I stay active, work out, and play sports 3 to 4 times a week. I tried taking her to the gym with me, but that failed. I don't know what to do. Story 19. She had trauma. At first, we tried getting intimate slowly with clear boundaries. It sort of worked, but it always ended with either me being pushed away or her in tears. I can't blame her, and I can't say I would have done anything differently in her shoes, but being pushed away for wanting intimacy is a horrible feeling. It made me feel like I was essaying her, even though she assured me afterwards that it wasn't because of me. So we cuddled, and I felt ashamed for wanting to be intimate with a woman I loved. I felt like a monster, especially because I had my own traumas to deal with. I stopped initiating, thinking she would tell me when she was ready again, but she never did. We eventually broke up. I knew I wasn't what she needed. Years later, she tried contacting me to see if I was interested in getting back together, but I was married by then, and I also knew it would be a repeat of last time. Again, I can't stress this enough. Everyone is well within their right to refuse intimate contact that makes them feel unsafe, but I was also within my right to leave, knowing I wasn't right for her. Story 20. I realized my idea of her didn't match who she actually was. I thought she was calmly being herself, but she got lost. As she tried to find herself, she stopped following her own compass and started listening to a group of women she worked with, women who were single or in very troubled relationships, some involving domestic violence. She started sounding like someone I didn't know. They told her to leave me and she listened. I'm not sure how she's doing now. I hope she's well, but I don't think she is. Story 21. I realized most of what she talked about was just complaining, and most of it was her own fault. Rarely was there anything positive or good, and she took no personal responsibility. It's such a turnoff when someone does nothing but complain and can't see that most of their problems are their own doing. Story 22. She had BPD, and while I entered the relationship with an open heart and no judgment, over time it became clear that I was drowning in emotional whiplash. There were constant mood swings, black and white thinking, and I became the emotional punching bag. She'd insult me with subtle digs, calling me useless when I made a mistake and then brush it off as just joking. The moment I pushed back and said it hurt, I was called too sensitive. If I ever spoke to her like that, she would have exploded. The most disturbing moment was when I opened up about my brother's past with drug addiction. Her response, "I like him even more now," and "I've got a thing for white guys with drug addictions." Then I found out she had been looking him up on Facebook. That crossed a serious line. She also couldn't stop bringing up her ex. "My first love, Andrew," she'd say, constantly talking about how great he was and how good things were with him. She compared me to him more than once. Later, I found out she had cheated on him, and when I confronted her, she said, "I didn't lie, I just didn't tell you." The emotional burden was relentless. There was no real accountability, only manipulation. Everything ran on her timeline. When to move in, when to talk, when to fight, when to make up. If I needed space to calm down, she'd demand resolution right then and there. It wasn't love, it was control. I finally left when I realized staying was slowly killing the parts of me I had worked hard to build. I left just before her surgery, and yes, I felt guilty for that, but I also knew that if I stayed, I'd lose myself completely. I didn't slam doors, I didn't scream, I just walked out quietly and never looked back. After that, she and her family said, "You never loved her if you left like that." But I did love her. I just finally chose to love myself more. Story 23. Constant yo-yoing of her emotional state. One minute, everything seems fine. I can even see glimpses of who she was before we had kids and before we got married. The next moment, she's vulgar, unkind, hurtful, short, angry, dismissive, and accusative over the smallest things. She shouts at me and acts like a complete POS in front of our kids. I'm sure the neighbors can hear her. We've been together 20 years, married for 15. I love her, but she doesn't want or initiate intimacy. I've given up trying. She says things like, "Am I a doll?" And "That's all you want me for." Right now, she's in her cutesy version, and I'm just waiting for her to snap back into angry dragon mode again. Eggshells don't even begin to cover it. Story 24. The fact that she was lying to me broke my trust, and I couldn't keep doing it anymore. On top of that, she didn't care about my pleasure, only hers, every single time, and I had to initiate 99% of the time. I broke up with her a week ago, and I feel better than I have in the last couple of years. I don't know why I didn't quit much sooner. Story 25. Being her emotional test subject, she would do little things just to see how much I would put up with. On our first date, we went to painting with a twist and had a great time. At the end of the night, she looked me square in the eye and said, "It was fun, but I've got to be honest with you. I'm just not attracted to you." I said, "Oh, well, thanks for going out with me. I wish you all the best in your search." A week later, she called me, upset because she thought I had ghosted her. Then she would simultaneously do things like invite me to dinner with her family, friends, and children, and brag about me to everyone. Her sister adored me, her mother, father, and both her children adored me. But she would also regularly start ridiculous fights over sometimes literally nothing. Physical intimacy was always amazing, but she would always make up excuses about why she couldn't sleep next to me. "You snore too loud," or "You take up too much space in my bed," or "I've been single for too long to be ready to share my bed." To which I responded, "But you share your bed every night with a 4-year-old Great Dane." When we finally split up, it was because one evening she told me, "Listen, I realize that you're a lot more in love with me than I am with you, and I don't want to treat you badly." I thought she was wrong and that I wasn't in love with her, but I chose discretion as the better part of valor and left as requested. Of course, Shia called me about 2 months later, angry because I was with someone else, but asked if we could remain friends. I said yes. Then her daughter and young son called me at different times to tell me what she had said about me. He's just too nice. I can't be with a guy who doesn't get angry. I just keep doing little crappy things to piss him off. Nothing works. This all went down about 3 years ago. Last year, she reached out saying she needed a real friend and wanted me to tell her where we went wrong. I told her the truth, that I had no faith that anything would ever change. We haven't talked since. Story 26. You hear no so many times that eventually you just stop trying. She does have some issues. Chronic fatigue, sciatica, and other things that leave her tired or sore. I guess that made me feel guilty about wanting her to be intimate with me. In the last 2 years, we've probably done 3 times, 2 of which were on trips away. The year before, the year That we did a lot of camping, and banging often happened then. So I looked forward not just to the camping, but also to the high chance of intimacy. Recently, I don't bother initiating at all. Part of her illnesses means she sometimes struggles to keep up her hygiene. She might only wash properly once every 2 weeks. She doesn't smell bad, and I wouldn't want to do it with someone who lacked basic hygiene. I do try to help. Just last week, I shaved her legs before she went to sit in the garden, thinking it would be nice if she did so with smooth legs. She appreciated it. Writing this, it's becoming clear to me that it feels less like a relationship and more like a caregiver situation. I think I'm okay with that, but it would have been nice if it also felt like a proper relationship. When we first got together, we were both younger and drank to get drunk more often, which often led to banging. That's really no way to start a relationship. Now, we haven't been drunk in a couple of years and things have changed for the better, except intimacy. It might be easy to assume we've been together for decades, but that's not the case. It's only been 5 years. I'm 35 and she is 42. Story 27. Gonna pop in and let all the dudes know that sometimes when a woman isn't intimately attracted to you anymore, even though nothing has changed in your eyes, it can be due to a lack of fulfillment in the relationship. For example, my husband had locked up emotionally, refused to communicate, and became rigid and harsh, but still expected S. I wasn't deciding to forego it. I simply wasn't interested because I felt he was emotionally disconnected. It turned out to be a vicious cycle. We went to therapy and we're fine now. Both of us had our defenses up. Both parties need softer communication, understanding, and respect. Less you statements and more, when you do this, I feel this. Was that your intention? After a while, you can fall back into the natural rhythm of the relationship. You start to understand each other again. We've been together 15 years. Story 28. Finding out she's half my age or maybe closer to 2/3, but still too big of a gap. I met someone at work and unexpectedly hit it off. So I invited her on a Sunday canoe trip with friends. We met up with everyone, shared a car out to the lake, and chatted about work, mutual friends, and so on. Finally, it was just her and me in a canoe, rowing, when she hits me with, "Your friends all seem kinda old." Late 30s, I guess. Wait, how old do you think I am? Like 25, 26? How old are you? 23 next month. I knew she was younger than me, but I had thought maybe late 20s or early 30s. Whoops. Story 29. When I rent an ocean view apartment in Australia for 6 months, 2 minutes from the beach, and I'm working at 5:30 a.m. every day to pay for everything, she's at home depressed, won't leave the house or go to the beach, and doesn't want to be intimate at all. Then I'm at the gym, and there's a completely shredded Australian girl who wants to hang out and go on dates. But I can't because I've got old Captain Depresso at home who doesn't want to do anything. This is all after legitimately putting in effort for over a year to bring her around and work on things. All of that together kind of kills the mood. Story 30. Controlling behavior, gaslighting, and a loss of my sense of personal and parental authority. Constant nagging and nitpicking, tapping or hitting me on the head when they were aggravated. Trying to separate me from my family through constant criticism, including criticism of my family's religion. Everything was blamed on me. There was open disgust for my interests, public embarrassment, and being shut down or ignored during conversations. It made me feel like I was losing touch with my own sense of reality. There was projection, sudden mood swings, and a lack of self-control in the way they spoke, often using harsh, dirty language. Story 31. There were lots of very good reasons, but the final straw was that she would vigorously pleasure herself the way she consistently enjoyed, finish, and then badger me to finish. The more she nagged, predictably, the longer it took, and the more she nagged. Then she would accuse me of just using her. I realized that this accusation, like all her other accusations, was projection. I was used to it. Again, that was all she was ever capable of. She's moved on to sugar relationships that are perfectly overt to any observer, except herself. Story 32. When the whole value proposition language leaked from the deep web into the mainstream and we started seeing the relationships as business transactions, my partner at the time, brainwashed by the "don't need no man" social media campaign, brought up over dinner, "What do you bring to the table?" Ironically, I was serving her and her children the dinner I had just cooked. I've never had a particular penchant for intimacy. It's just okay, often more of an annoyance than a pleasure. She used it as leverage, like it was the greatest bargaining chip ever invented. I was a corporate guy at the time, so once she shifted my home mask to my corporate mask, we had a pretty serious discussion about the future of our company. I informed her that due to lack of capital and dwindling liquid assets, we'd be insolvent within 3 months. Oh, and she was banging her coworker, but probably just that. Story 33. For me, it's been a variety of reasons across different relationships, but it's gotten to the point where I've mostly lost interest in intimacy altogether. In my first relationship, it was because I was always the one to initiate, and the no to yes ratio was demoralizing. There's only so much rejection you can take, especially from someone who says they love you. She'd also get annoyed whenever I said no to her for anything, so it always felt one-sided. In the next relationship, it was mostly because of her weird likings. I'm not into that, but I cared deeply for her, so I tried for her sake. It made me extremely uncomfortable. I set boundaries that I was okay with, but she would always overstep them and say she got lost in the moment. I eventually stopped trying, knowing where it was heading. Then she complained that our intimate life was boring and vanilla, so I stopped trying altogether. Another relationship became transactional. She never seemed to want intimacy. She just used it as a reward or payment when I did things for her. That made me feel unwanted, so I rejected that arrangement. As an aside, 2 of the 3 of these women eventually cheated on me, and all 3 relationships ended because I expressed my feelings and was told some version of, "That wasn't very manly, so I'm not attracted to you anymore." I'm tired, man. It's not all miserable, though. I lost interest in and stopped sleeping with an FWB because she confessed she had real feelings for me and wanted to date. I liked her, but I didn't see her that way. I didn't want to hurt or lead her on, so we agreed to stop. We're still friends, and her husband and I get along well. So yeah, I'm not going to say any crap like all women are like this. I've just had awful luck and don't want to go through it again. Story 34. Everything I do is wrong. Nothing is ever right, no matter how hard I try or how many chores I do. If we have an argument, suddenly I don't care about the family, and I don't do anything around the house. Almost everything turns into an argument, and I have to do everything exactly the way she would, or it's wrong. I don't have any attraction to her anymore. She's beautiful, but all she does is complain, complain, complain. Story 35. It just gets exhausting, mentally and physically, when they lose their way, check out, or expect you to be there while putting in no effort. For months, she kept saying, "I'm working on it," then pulled little narcissistic moves, making it seem like I was the problem, and she wasn't good enough. I finally drew the line and told her she had to decide, counseling or divorce. We're in couples therapy now. Reading the comments, I see so many check marks. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Story 36. Being ignored, taken for granted, and disrespected. Always the one to take initiative, show interest, be creative, plan dates, cook, do chores. Basically, she was lazy, avoidant, negative, and treated me poorly. She finally got therapy for her issues, and we're working on rebuilding our relationship. I'm not sure I'll ever fully reconcile the fact that she was okay letting me suffer to avoid dealing with her own issues for 20 years. Story 37. I settled for a girl I'm not really attracted to because of my dad. I'm going to have to explain. I was casually sleeping around, having meaningless relations with multiple people, and my partner now was one of them. She was free to do what she wanted since she was single. Then she got pregnant, and the baby's dad wanted nothing to do with the child. My father met my mother while she was pregnant with me. I found this out when I tried to open my first bank account at 16 and realized my surname didn't match my dad's. He raised me and did everything for me. I still talk to him every day. He's my friend and my dad. He did a great job, essentially taking me on as his son, and I've always respected that. I was overcome with a sense of duty to this unborn child. I didn't want him to grow up without that father figure. I'm stuck in a relationship, doing my best to be the same kind of father to this kid that my dad was to me. I have zero feelings toward my partner. We argue constantly, though never in front of the kid, and neither of us are interested in each other intimately. I am the breadwinner, and I don't want to upset my kid's family nucleus, but as soon as he's 18 and hopefully off to college or something, I'm gone. I plan to essentially restart my life and enjoy it again. Story 38. I've had 3 different relationships, each with very different outcomes. In my first relationship, I realized I didn't want children with her. She had various diagnoses, and I could see we had no future together. She struggled to take care of herself, and I couldn't see her managing to raise a child. The second relationship was a bit unusual. She was in love with me, but I wasn't in love with her. I tried to make it work, but it wasn't easy. Once, while she was giving me a blowy, she looked up and said, "What if I bit your dong off now?" Completely random. I got scared and said, "Thank you and goodbye, you won't come near my dong again." She broke down, saying it was just for fun. No thanks. New phobia unlocked. My wife, whom I am now married to, has had chronic headaches for about 18 months. She's been going through hell. We've had done it a couple of times in that period, but her pain afterward is extreme, especially when she gets done, which happens easily for her. It's sad, but I've told her it's not worth it right now. I can't enjoy seeing her feel so bad afterward. I definitely miss it, but life isn't over yet, and I hope one day we can get back to how it was before. Story 39. Being her emotional punching bag. She would come home constantly complaining about how crappy her job treated her. I'd tell her to stand up for herself, but she refused. I even offered for her to quit while I covered the bills until she found something new. She said, "No, I don't want to be dependent on you." Months of her coming home miserable, refusing therapy, refusing to stand up for herself at her abusive workplace, refusing to quit. It dragged me into a pit of despair. I felt completely powerless to help because she was so stubborn. It killed my drive, my motivation, everything. I'm still trying to pull myself out of that pit. Story 40. As a woman reading this, I wanted to share my perspective. In my younger years, I was a nymph, and that kept me constantly in relationships because I didn't want a high body count. My ex told me he never felt enough, which honestly became a huge turnoff. Now I'm 40, and over the past 2 or 3 years, I've just lost all drive. It was like someone switched it off. Intimacy had become the same every time. 2 positions, quick, like a chore. Foreplay was just a check to see if I was wet enough. Even if I initiated, it was always the same routine. I bought some toys, I tried talking about it, nothing changed. I'd look in the mirror afterward and feel so much shame and disgust. My words meant nothing. I felt like just the garbage bag cleaning up after his mess. As for hygiene, some of you men mentioned it, I always wet wipe and shower. There's no depression or moodiness to turn me off. I asked several times for effort, but it never came. Eventually, I just felt disgusted with myself, begging for boring, no effort, and it became easier to stop wanting it. It can go 4 to 6 months in between now. I used to want it every day, but honestly, it's actually nice not being rejected anymore. Finally, I've become someone who doesn't need it. Story 41. A long time ago, I was dating a girl, and we went to a New Year's party with lots of people, many of them my friends. The place was huge, and we got separated several times over the night. At one point, someone told me she was kind of drunk and hitting on everyone. I found her in a semi-hidden spot kissing a guy I didn't know. When he realized she was supposed to be with me, he had no idea. He immediately apologized and backed off. He even apologized to me later. Cool bro moment. She, however, tried to make a scene. Apparently, she'd been hitting on anyone all night. I immediately broke up with her, but I was her ride, and the place was in the middle of nowhere, no Ubers or anything at the time. I told her I'd put up with her until we got back to her car, and then she was free to do whatever she wanted, as long as it didn't include me. The ride back was incredibly awkward. She made it worse by trying to do it with me when we arrived. That was a hard no. I was more disgusted with someone than I ever knew I could be. I kicked her out of the car and went home. The next day, she called me saying I was being too harsh and insensitive. I hung up and never heard from her again. Story 42. Apart from the lack of initiative and effort many others have mentioned, she also really let herself go. She often smelled because she only showered twice a week in the summer. She had some warts, which I really dislike, and whenever we were in bed, she would fart on my sheets despite me asking her not to. Sometimes the farts were wet and left brown spots. Honestly, gave off public restroom vibes. One time, while lying in bed, I noticed a shiny plastic snowflake in her butt crack from a concert she'd attended about a week earlier. When I asked when she had last showered, I realized she'd been marinating in her own stench for 7 days. I tried to get her to shower with me as foreplay, but she never wanted to. She only wanted to be eaten out. Story 43. I'm pretty sensitive to preferences. If someone says they don't like a dish, I stop making it for them and so on. Unfortunately, that comes from a pretty abusive childhood, so I can't really help it. She was never consistent with what she liked, and that stressed me out to no end. I brought it up multiple times, and she insisted she was very consistent and had very specific likes. Then she said she was desperate for me to touch her in any way. I initiated, and what's the first thing she says? Not that, not tonight. A short time later, she broke up with me. Story 44. Everything in the house felt like it was on my shoulders. My partner was at home on maternity leave while I finished my university degree, worked full-time, and did all the cooking and almost all the cleaning. For context, the baby was in daycare 4 days a week, and she stayed off work until he was 18 months old. Even when I took on additional study, everything still fell on me. I was cooking, cleaning, and dealing with the toddler when I got home. Then we had a second child, and it became my responsibility to carry the household again. She opted for extended maternity leave against my wishes, with the kids in care 3 or 4 days a week. I still did most of the cooking, cleaning, and worked full-time, and when I was home, the kids were all over me. I had also just finished another university course. While I overloaded myself, my partner didn't pick up any tasks. She started to change, but then reverted to her old habits. It's draining, and what really grinds me is hearing her complain about having no spare time while spending 8 hours a day on her phone. Story 45. Most of the issues revolve around initiating intimacy and the partner's reaction. Many people experienced asking repeatedly and hearing no, while when she wanted it, you were expected to drop everything and oblige. Others were the only ones initiating it all. Some women made everything feel like a chore, and many nagged constantly. Being with your significant other shouldn't feel like walking on eggshells all the time. Some stories involve abusive partners who hit their significant other, or even a child, so hard they lost consciousness. What the hell? Sometimes it feels like women don't realize how important intimacy is. At the end of the day, we just want to connect, eat well, enjoy ourselves, and get laid. Everything else is just stuff that enables us to do those things. Story 46. Reading these comments, I see that half of it is intimate desire, and the other half is just feeling used. I feel so bad for every man who has had to experience this. As a woman, I was always flirty with most guys, but when I met the love of my life, I just needed to be near him or talk to him to feel like my heart was going to pound out of my chest. The way he makes me feel just makes me want him even more. Not to mention the desire to sleep with him, which is a huge part too. But if we are talking about happiness, I don't even need S to feel happy and loved by him. That shocked me the most while being with him. I hope all of you meet someone who will love you, care for you, cuddle you, support you, and help you. You all deserve love. Please don't give up hope because of these poor experiences. I wish everyone the best of luck. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.